You see, you can't soar with eagles when you're pecking around with chickens. You can't walk into your purpose while staying anchored to people who don't believe in purpose. You can't live a life of power when you keep surrounding yourself with people who live in fear, because proximity. Proximity is power. It's not just about who's around you. It's about what's around you, what's influencing you, what's shaping the way you think, speak, and act. Some of you are praying for transformation while staying planted in toxic soil. You keep asking God to take you higher, but you won't leave the place that's keeping you low. You've outgrown certain environments, but you stay because it's familiar. You stay because it's safe. But what you don't realize is your atmosphere is influencing your altitude. You can't rise if everything around you is holding you down. Listen, iron sharpens iron. But if all you're around is dull blades and broken tools, you'll start mistaking friction for sharpening. You'll start confusing chaos for community. The wrong people will make you question the right calling. They'll have you doubting your gift, minimizing your vision, silencing your voice until you no longer recognize the greatness that's been planted in you. That's the danger of staying in close proximity to the wrong influence for too long. But there's good news. There's a shift that happens when you get in proximity to power. When you get around people who have been somewhere, done something, and carry a fire for purpose. That energy transfers. You feel it. It's electric. You sit with someone who's been through storms and still praises. You talk with someone who turned pain into power. And you realize it's possible, not just for them, but for you. Suddenly, your excuses don't hold the same weight. Your limitations don't feel as permanent. You begin to see how small your circle has been, how low your standards were set. And you're confronted with a decision, stay safe or step into something greater. Because here's the truth, elevation requires separation. Growth will cost you comfort, and there are some people you just can't carry with you into the next chapter. They were part of your story, yes, but not your destiny. Some of you are waiting for things to get better, while God is waiting for you to move. Waiting for the blessings to show up while you keep staying connected to dead weight. You can't expect to breathe in fresh vision when you keep inhaling stale air. You've got to get in the room where the language is different, where the mindset is elevated, where the standard is excellence. You've got to be in close proximity to power so you stop making peace with mediocrity. Let me tell you, your life will change the moment you change what you tolerate around you. The moment you stop entertaining conversations that keep you small. The moment you stop settling for comfort and start chasing calling. You weren't built to be average. You weren't made to blend in. But you've been in rooms that made you doubt that truth. That made you shrink to make others comfortable. But not anymore. You've got to find your tribe, your circle. The people who speak life into your bones and won't let you forget who you are when life tries to shake your identity. People who won't celebrate your silence just because it makes them feel less threatened. Get around people who call you higher. Who won't let you settle, who won't clap for you when you're hiding. That's the kind of proximity that ignites purpose. And it's not just about who you meet. It's about what you stay around, because proximity isn't a one-time connection. It's consistency. You've got to dwell there, soak in the environment, let it stretch you, let it challenge you. Get around people who force you to raise your voice, raise your standard, raise your expectation. That's where transformation starts. That's when the real fire gets lit. See, when you change your proximity, you don't just change your company, you change your clarity. Things that used to confuse you suddenly make sense. Patterns that used to trip you up start to break. Because the atmosphere has shifted, you're no longer breathing in fear, you're inhaling faith. You're no longer surrounded by people who talk about what can't happen. You're walking with people who have made it happen. And it rubs off, it rewires how you see the world, how you see yourself. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're wondering why things aren't shifting, check your proximity. Who's around you? What energy are you absorbing? What voices are in your ear? Because power is transferable. But so is doubt, so is fear, so is insecurity, and if you want to live in purpose, walk in power, and step into the fullness of what's ahead, then you better get in the right proximity. Because the level you're believing for, the breakthrough you're praying for, it's waiting for you on the other side of the circle you're willing to let go of. Sometimes you just need to see it. You need to see someone who broke through what you're still wrestling with. You need to see somebody stand on the other side of what you thought was impossible and still be breathing. Still be rising, still be praising, because when you see someone else walk through what you thought would break you, something inside of you comes alive. That's the power of proximity. It gives you permission to believe again, to stretch again, to hope again. There are things you would never believe could happen for you until you watch them happen for someone who looks like you, talks like you, struggles like you, came from where you came from and still made it. That's why who you're around matters so much. Because the people you're close to, the lives you're watching, the stories you're soaking in, they are shaping what you believe is possible for your life. Some of us aren't struggling with lack of potential, we're struggling with a lack of exposure. We've been surrounded by limitation for so long that we've started calling it wisdom. We've been fed fear for so long, we've started calling it faith. We've been told to play it safe, stay small, stay humble. But the truth is, that was never about humility. That was about fear. That was about keeping you in the boat when you were meant to walk on water. But something happens when you get around someone who's walked on that water. Someone who's done what others said couldn't be done. You hear their story and it wakes something up in you. Not because they gave you the answers, but because their example gave you permission. You start thinking, if they can do it, maybe I can too. That's what proximity does. It doesn't always give you direction, but it shifts your expectation. And that shift, that's everything. You've got to stop underestimating how powerful exposure is. You've got to stop thinking that your belief system was built in isolation. No, your beliefs were shaped in rooms, in conversations, around dinner tables, through teachers, preachers, parents, and partners. And if all you've ever been around is pain, fear, and struggle, then no wonder your vision is small. But get in the right room, get around people who speak with boldness, who live with vision, who pray with fire, and your whole world, you starts to change. That's why the enemy wants to keep you isolated, wants to keep you circling the same crowd, because he knows if you ever see it, if you ever get close enough to feel what power looks like, sounds like, walks like, then you won't settle anymore. You won't stay small anymore. You won't accept being tolerated when you were born to be celebrated. One glimpse of real purpose, real peace, real breakthrough, and you'll never go back to what you came from. But you've got to be willing to move. You've got to be willing to shift your surroundings. You can't stay in dead places hoping for living dreams. You can't keep showing up to empty wells and wonder why your spirit is thirsty. You've got to go where the water flows. Get around the ones who have tapped into something deeper. Get close enough to see the scars that didn't stop them. Close enough to feel the strength that came from the crushing. Proximity doesn't mean you're copying someone else's path. It means you're awakening to your own. You're not looking for a shortcut. You're searching for a spark. And sometimes all it takes is one conversation, one connection, one moment in the presence of someone who's already where you want to go. to unlock everything you've been carrying inside you. Not because they gave you something new, but because they reminded you of what was already there. You ever been in a room that made you sit up straighter? Made you speak more clearly? Made you pray more boldly? That's the kind of space you need to be in. The kind that pulls more out of you. The kind that stretches your faith, not just your feelings. The kind that raises the temperature until you can't sit in comfort anymore. You were never meant to walk this journey alone. You were never designed to figure it all out in silence. There is something sacred about being close to someone who's walked the road before you. It's not that they have all the answers. It's that their very presence proves it can be done. Their life is a map. Their testimony is a mirror. And sometimes you need to see a reflection of what's possible to remember who you are. So stop waiting for someone to hand you permission. Stop thinking you need confirmation to go where your spirit is already pulling you. Get in the room, get close enough to witness the fire, and then fan your own into a flame because permission has already been granted. You ever walked into a room and felt drained before anybody even said a word? You walked in with peace, but somehow walked out carrying weight that wasn't even yours. That's not coincidence, that's energy, and energy is contagious. Whether you realize it or not, every day you're absorbing the temperature of the people you're around. You're soaking in the mindset, the attitude, the faith, or the fear of whoever's close to you. That's why proximity isn't just influence, it's transfer. See, you're not just choosing relationships, you're choosing atmospheres. You're not just spending time, you're being shaped in that time. And the truth is, you can't soar when you're surrounded by people who have clipped their own wings. You can't stay on fire when everyone around you is walking around with wet blankets. You've got dreams, you've got vision, you've got something stirring on the inside, but if you keep letting the wrong voices into your space, they'll smother your spark before it ever becomes a flame. Some of you are frustrated because you're putting in the work, you're praying, you're showing up, but nothing's moving. And it's not because you're broken. It's not because you don't have what it takes. It's because you're fighting to rise while being surrounded by people who are comfortable staying stuck. You're building while they're tearing down. You're dreaming while they're doubting. You're trying to elevate while they're celebrating average. And you wonder why your energy is off. It's not you, it's what you're connected to. Every person in your life is either adding to your purpose or subtracting from your power. And you've got to get real clear about who's doing what. Because when you're carrying vision, when you're chasing something bigger than yourself, you can't afford to be casual with your circle. You can't afford to keep entertaining relationships that cost you your peace, your clarity, your fire. You can't walk into destiny dragging dead weight. You've got to protect your energy like your life depends on it, because it does. It's not selfish, it's stewardship. It's not about cutting people off. It's about honoring what's on your life. If someone's presence consistently disrupts your progress, that's not connection, that's contamination. And you've got to learn the difference between company and alignment. Just because someone's been in your life for a long time doesn't mean they belong in the next chapter. When you're walking with God, when you're trying to build something real, you start to realize that certain atmospheres can't hold the weight of your calling. Certain people can't carry the depth of your dream. They'll try to minimize it. They'll try to mock it. Not because they're evil, but because your growth makes them uncomfortable. Your elevation challenges their stagnation. Your hunger exposes their complacency. And instead of rising with you, they'll try to bring you back down to what's familiar. That's why you've got to be intentional about who gets close to you. Not everybody deserves access. Not everybody should have a seat at the table. You need people who stir your spirit, not your anxiety. People who see the call on your life and won't let you play small. People who push you, who stretch you, who remind you of who you really are when the voices in your head try to tell you otherwise. And let me tell you, there's nothing like being around people who are on fire. You ever sat next to someone who's been through hell but still has joy, still has hope, still walks like they know God has the final word? That kind of energy is contagious. That kind of presence will snap you out of your excuses. It'll pull you out of your pity party and remind you that you've still got fight in you. That's the kind of proximity you need, because it's not just about protecting yourself from negative energy. It's about placing yourself in purposeful energy. Environments where faith is normal, where big dreams are expected, where stretching is celebrated, where growth isn't optional, it's the standard. You start to breathe differently in those spaces. You speak differently. You pray with more power. You think with more clarity. That's what happens when the atmosphere is charged with purpose. So if you feel stuck, heavy, confused, maybe it's not a sign to quit. Maybe it's just time to shift your environment. Maybe it's time to stop blaming yourself and start checking your circle. Because your energy is your fuel, and if you keep filling your tank with the wrong kind of influence, don't be surprised when the engine starts misfiring. You were built to run on vision, on passion, on truth, not drama, not doubt, not gossip. You are carrying too much purpose to stay in environments that drain you. It's time to be selective. It's time to be intentional. It's time to surround yourself with people who don't just look good on the outside, but carry weight on the inside. Because when the energy is right, the elevation comes naturally. Some of you have been sitting on a gold mine of potential, wondering why you haven't broken through yet. You've read the books, listened to the podcasts, taken the notes, made the vision boards, but nothing's shifting. And it's not because you don't have the knowledge. You've got information coming out of your ears. What you're missing is access. You're missing proximity to someone who's walked the road, paid the price, and carries the weight of experience. There are things you'll never fully understand just by studying them. You have to be there. You have to witness it. There's a difference between hearing about fire and feeling its heat. There's a difference between reading a manual and walking beside a master. When you get in proximity to power, you stop learning only through theory. You start learning through presence. You see how they move, you hear how they speak, you watch how they handle storms, how they navigate resistance, how they stay grounded in chaos. And it teaches you something no textbook ever could. You've been praying for acceleration, but acceleration doesn't always come through more effort. Sometimes it comes through connection. One conversation in the right room can unlock what 100 lonely nights couldn't. One divine relationship can open a door you couldn't find with 1,000 strategies. Because access isn't just about who you know. It's about what you absorb when you're near the right voice, in the right room, under the right covering. Some of you are sitting outside doors that were never locked. You're waiting on permission when all you needed was proximity. You're trying to figure out the formula when God's answer is to put you in the room not to impress, not to perform, just to absorb, just to watch, just to learn. Because sometimes the lesson is in the atmosphere. Sometimes the impartation comes just from being there. I've watched people rise not because they had the best ideas, not because they were the most gifted, but because they were available. Because they got close enough to someone who had already blazed the trail. They got close enough to listen. Close enough to be challenged, close enough to be sharpened, and that proximity changed them. It matured them. It prepared them for rooms they hadn't even prayed for yet. That's what strategy looks like in this season. Not just hustling harder, not burning yourself out trying to do everything alone. It's stepping into spaces that stretch you, submitting to voices that speak to your destiny, not your comfort, getting under mentorship, leadership, guidance, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Proximity is strategy, and if you're going to go where God is calling you, you've got to be willing to align yourself with the right people, even if it humbles your pride. Some of you keep trying to build from scratch what someone else already laid a foundation for. You're reinventing wheels because you're too afraid to ask for help. Too prideful to sit at someone else's feet, but the kingdom doesn't move on ego, it moves on alignment. It moves on order. And when you honor what someone else has built, when you get close enough to learn not take, but honor, there's a blessing in that alignment that can't be explained in worldly terms. You need to stop asking, what do I need to know, and start asking, who do I need to be around? Because the truth is, the next level isn't about more knowledge, it's about a new connection. And that connection could be the bridge between where you are and where you've been called to be. Don't overlook it just because it's not flashy. Don't despise it because it doesn't come with applause. Sometimes the most powerful doors are the quietest ones. Sometimes the greatest rooms are behind relationships, not resumes. If you're tired of circling the same mountain, maybe it's time to check who's circling it with you. If you're weary of trying to figure it all out alone, maybe it's time to find someone who's already walked it out. And not just so you can copy their steps, but so you can catch their spirit, catch their wisdom, catch their discipline, catch their hunger. That's what happens when you get in proximity to greatness. It rubs off. This is your season to move with strategy. This is your season to stop hiding behind busyness and start stepping into boldness. You don't need more inspiration. You need access. You don't need more information, you need impartation. Get in the room, get near the fire, stop standing at a distance when God is calling you closer. Because one moment in the right proximity can do what years of striving never could. There's something most people don't talk about when it comes to personal growth and breakthrough. It's not just about what you learn. It's not just about what you know. It's about what you feel on a consistent basis. Because let me tell you, emotion is contagious. You can catch it just like a cold. You hang around fear long enough, you'll start second, guessing yourself. You sit with bitterness too long and your joy starts to shrink. You stay too close to people who constantly complain and suddenly you can't see the blessing right in front of you. That's why proximity is so much more than just a location issue, it's a conditioning issue. The people you're around don't just influence what you do, they shape how you feel. And when you start to feel small, discouraged, overlooked, or unworthy all the time, it's often a reflection of who you've been in emotional proximity to. You've been surrounded by voices that don't speak life. You've been sitting in atmospheres that don't stir your spirit. You've been conditioned to feel like less because everything around you has been running at a lesser frequency. But when you change the emotional climate you dwell in, everything starts to shift. You start walking different, talking different, thinking different, not because someone gave you a new set of rules, but because you've been conditioned in a new environment. You've been exposed to a new way of living. That's what happens when you get in proximity to people who are bold, passionate, full of fire, full of faith. Their courage starts to rub off on you. Their confidence starts to wake something up in you. Their strength starts to remind you of your own. See, the spirit of a place is powerful. You can walk into a room and feel freedom, or you can feel fear. You can walk into a conversation and feel lifted, or feel torn down, and you don't have to say a word to pick up that emotional residue. Just being in the presence of certain people can condition your emotions whether you realize it or not. That's why you've got to be careful who you let close, careful what energy you allow to linger, because emotion is not just internal, it's environmental. Some of you keep wondering why you keep falling back into the same emotional cycles, why you feel drained, anxious, discouraged, numb. And it's not that something's wrong with you. It's that your atmosphere hasn't changed. You've been trying to feel new things while staying in old environments. You've been trying to walk in power while being surrounded by passivity. You've been trying to live in purpose while living around people who gave up on theirs a long time ago. It's time to recognize that emotional conditioning is real. You become emotionally familiar with whatever you're around the most. If you stay around people who panic under pressure, you'll start to doubt your peace. If you surround yourself with people who settle for less, you'll start to question your dreams. But if you spend enough time around faith, courage, hope, and tenacity that will become your new normal, you'll find yourself reacting differently, not because someone told you to, but because your emotions have been trained by a different standard. That's why some rooms make you rise. That's why certain conversations make your soul sit up straighter. You ever been around someone whose very presence made you want to do better, be better, think sharper? That's not accidental. That's emotional entrainment. That's the alignment of your emotional rhythm with the energy around you. And when you get around strength long enough, weakness doesn't feel familiar anymore. When you get around joy long enough, depression stops feeling like home. You don't just need inspiration, you need immersion. You need to place yourself in emotional atmospheres that support your growth. Not just once a year at a conference, not just on Sundays, but daily, constantly, consistently, so that your emotional baseline rises to meet your potential. You start to expect more from life because you've been surrounded by people who expect more. You start to show up differently. Not because you're pretending, but because your internal climate has caught up with your calling. And don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting your peace, for choosing joy, for staying close to people who light your fire instead of extinguishing it. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. You fought too hard to find peace. Don't give it up just to make someone else comfortable. You've climbed too far to let the wrong atmosphere pull you back down. Surround yourself with people who pull greatness out of you. Stay in rooms where your strength is activated, not silenced, where your faith is stretched, not smothered. Because proximity to the right emotion births the right momentum. Every day, whether you realize it or not, you are becoming something. You are becoming bolder or you are becoming bitter. You are becoming more free or more fearful. You are becoming wiser or wearier. And what determines that? What shapes who you're becoming isn't always your intention, your talent, or your work ethic. It's your proximity, who you're close to, what you're consistently exposed to, the voices you listen to, the environment you dwell in. That's what molds you. You don't drift into destiny. You don't stumble into growth. You don't arrive at purpose by accident. You get there through alignment, through decisions, through relationships. And too many people are trying to live a life of purpose while staying tethered to environments that contradict their calling. You can't grow in the dark if your light keeps being smothered. You can't move forward while holding hands with what was meant to stay behind. It's time to make a conscious decision about who and what you stay close to, because staying close isn't just about comfort, it's about creation. Your closeness is creating something in you. Some of you are battling discouragement, not because you lack faith, but because you've stayed too close to people who don't know how to speak life. Some of you are fighting to hold on to your identity because the atmosphere you're in keeps making you question your value. You weren't made to carry confusion, but you've been soaking in it. You weren't made to live in scarcity, but you've been conditioned by it. You've got to choose your proximity like your future depends on it, because it does. If you want to walk in peace, you can't stay close to chaos. If you want to walk in clarity, you can't keep dancing with confusion. If you want to walk in purpose, you can't cling to people who only understand your past. You are becoming something, and if you're not becoming more of who God called you to be, then you've got to ask, what's around me that's pulling me away? Some of you are asking for transformation, but unwilling to leave toxic familiarity. You've mistaken comfort for peace. You've mistaken loyalty for alignment. Just because someone's been there doesn't mean they're for you. Just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's fruitful. It's time to evaluate, what is my proximity producing in me? What fruit is showing up in my mindset, my emotions, my spirit? Because if your environment is producing fear, bitterness, procrastination, or confusion, then it's not neutral, it's shaping you. You don't just need inspiration, you need separation. You need the courage to leave behind what's been keeping you small. You need the boldness to detach from voices that drown out the sound of destiny. You need the clarity to recognize when something you were close to in the last season has become a hindrance in this one. That's not dishonor, that's growth, that's stewardship, that's wisdom, because you are becoming whether you intend to or not. So, what are you becoming close to? You've got to understand that every relationship is an agreement. You may not say it out loud, but by staying connected, you're saying, I agree with this rhythm. I agree with this frequency. I agree with this atmosphere. And when what you're connected to contradicts what God is building in you, something has to give. Either your proximity will pull your calling down, or your calling will force you to shift your proximity. Let me speak this over you. You don't owe anyone your becoming. You don't owe your future to a past that no longer fits. You don't owe your growth to people who can't handle your next level. Your becoming is sacred. And if they can't respect it, protect it, or support it, then maybe they were only meant for a chapter, not the whole book. And that's okay. Let them go with love. But don't stay out of guilt. This is the season to choose wisely. To plant yourself where your roots can go deep, and your branches can stretch wide. To align with voices that sharpen your spirit. To walk with people who challenge your stagnation and stir up your gifts. Because becoming is not accidental, it's intentional. It's slow, it's sacred, and it's shaped by what you stay close to. So choose your proximity with purpose. Protect your energy with honor, and become everything you were born to be without apology.